So when it comes to, what people like Gavin Newsom are doing, this is why I say what he's doing is very similar to what people like Ron DeSantis is doing. I see really no difference between them. Let's take a look at this. So this is out of Daytona Beach. It says, what's Florida's homeless law? How new rules will impact homeless population. This came out last year. It says Florida homeless are now banned from camping or sleeping on public property under a new law signed by Governor Ron DeSantis back in March. Who does this sound like? It sounds like Gavin Newsom. It says the new statute took effect on Tuesday, October 2nd, with the Associated Press sharing it as one of the strictest anti-homeless measures in the nation. Florida would not allow homeless encampments to intrude on its citizens or undermine their quality of life like we see in states like New York and California. Well, apparently, that's BS because California's doing the same thing. How is it any different? So here's Ron DeSantis playing partisan politics, when in reality, Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom are just as cruel as one or the other. They don't really give a damn about people who are unhoused. They don't give a damn about people having upward mobility in this state. They don't. So really, what's the difference between them? There's no difference. When it comes to the homeless, I really don't see much daylight between Democrats and Republicans, especially now, right? I don't really see it. And so, unfortunately, it's non-existent, right? Because of course, when you're, bankrolled by the rich, the wealthy, the well-connected, of course, you're going to do their bidding instead of the bidding of the people. So I want to get into this about Gavin Newsom, because Gavin Newsom, this guy is just the worst, and it reminds me of Ron DeSantis. So let's share this. California Governor Gavin Newsom demands cities force homeless people to move every 72 hours. First of all, let me tell you something. Do you know how stressful it is to have to move? And to have to move every 72 hours? They really do hate the poor and working poor. They really do. Let's get into it. All right. So it says on May 12th, California Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, demanded that cities throughout the state adopt anti-camping ordinances that would effectively ban public homelessness by requiring unhoused individuals to relocate every 72 hours. While presented as a humanitarian effort to reduce homelessness, the new policy victimizes California's growing unhoused population, approximately 187,000 people, by tying funding to Proposition 1 to local laws banning sleeping or camping on public land. In his announcement, Newsom pushed local governments to adopt the draconian ordinances without delay. Quote, "We want to see this model ordinance across the state of California." While the announcement does not explicitly compel local governments to comply, Newsom hinted that those failing to adopt the ordinance could face withholding of state funds. The attacks are a continuation of the long-standing assault on California's vulnerable homeless population. In July of 2024, Newsom ordered state officials to dismantle homeless encampments across California, directly citing the Supreme Court's June 2024 decision in Grants Pass versus Johnson, which ruled that the city of Grants Pass, Oregon, did not violate the Eighth Amendment's prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment by banning homeless encampments, even for those with nowhere else to go. While Proposition 1 allocates $3.3 billion for mental health and addiction treatment services, the infrastructure for these programs does not yet exist. Yet the sweeps are already underway. At the same time, the state's proposed budget includes cuts to the homeless housing assistance and prevention program. Last year, Paul Simmons, executive director for Californians Against Prop 1, stated it's all in preparation of hiding the homeless instead of helping them. It will still be a bridge to nowhere, pushing people into a system that can't even handle what we have now. Says the latest attack, however, is a qualitatively different character. While previous sweeps generally focus on displacement rather than arrest or institutionalization, there are now increasing calls at all levels of government for the outright removal of undesirable elements. So this is basically, there's not much of a gulf between a Gavin Newsom and a Ron DeSantis. And so for the people who say, well, the Democrats are better on this, no, they're not. Gavin Newsom certainly isn't. And instead of actually truly providing housing for the people who are homeless and unhoused, he is basically just wanting to shuffle them around so they're out of sight, out of mind. And so a lot of times people will go, well, why don't they just use the services that they have? Well, we're going to get into that in a second and show you why these services are inadequate. So let's continue. It says, in addition to the dire lack of shelters and services accessible to those in need, existing shelters often impose extremely restrictive conditions, barring pets, requiring separation from partners or family members, and in many cases being plagued by well-documented instances of abuse and violence. So it's not just that, but that's part and parcel of it. But also some of these shelters, especially the ones that have religious backing, they will force you to adhere to like going to like their Bible studies or their classes for Bible class and things like that in order to have housing. And what if you're already in a different religious denomination, or what if you're in a completely different religion? What if you're Muslim, but then this Christian organization is like, well, you have to study the Bible with us, and you have to sit with us, and you have to pray to our God and things like that, right? Or what if you're somebody that's atheist, but you now have to, in order to have housing, you have to essentially, wave away your principles and go, with whatever they choose religiously. Or if you have a family member that you want to stick close to, you can't, because there's some shelters where it's like women and children only, no men. So therefore, if you have a husband, well, he has to go with the men. Or if you have a son that is considered to be too old, he can't be with you and the rest of your family. He has to go be with the men, even if he may have to be alone. There are also times where people have experienced sexual assault while in these shelters. People will steal from other people in these shelters. Things are not secure. On top of it, a lot of times people talk about, well, mental health. Well, if mental illness is an issue, then why aren't we making sure that they have housing so that it alleviates some of the issues regarding mental health? Why do they have to heal from their mental health while being homeless? Shouldn't it be the other way around? Put them in homes so that it helps their mental health improve instead first? Or then they'll talk about people who are, have substance abuse. A lot of the people who are homeless who do have substance abuse, they abuse substances because they're homeless, because they weren't abusing substances before they were homeless. It happened after they became homeless. And even if it did happen before they became homeless, right? You know how many people abuse substances who got money? Hey, are you going to say the same thing to Emmanuel Macron and his buddies when they were on that flight? Oh, well, you guys can't have housing until you guys get yourself clean. Because everybody saw that Emmanuel Macron was hiding some of that twinkle twinkle. Yet nobody's talking about, oh, well, he shouldn't have housing. I can't tell you how many people who are in corporate America that partake in some nose candy. And yet people don't go to them and question them about their being able to have housing. Because they already got the money. Why is it that we have to put barriers, to housing based on whether or not they're, abusing substances? You know how many people are addicted to sugar? Are we going to start, not allowing people to have housing if they have an addiction to sugar? Don't it's a health issue. We got to stop treating these health issues as moral issues. Anywho, with nowhere else to go, no help, and the threat of state-sponsored violence and incarceration, these measures effectively criminalize poverty. They do nothing to address the root causes of the homelessness crisis, a national and global phenomenon driven by soaring living costs, the dismantling of public health and social services to fund police militarization and war, and broader attacks on democratic rights. These are the inevitable consequences of an economic system that prioritizes profit over human need, capitalism. Newsom's declaration of a budget shortfall and the accompanying cuts to social services are part of sweeping attacks on the lives and livelihoods of workers across the country as the ruling class defends the extreme concentration of wealth. This is from David North on the 2025 May Day rally. Says in absolute terms, even when adjusted for inflation, the personal wealth of multi-billionaire oligarchs surpasses that of the robber barons of the late 19th and earlier 20th centuries. The scale of wealth concentrated in an infinitesimal section of the population all but defies comprehension. A recently published analysis of wealth distribution in the United States reported that in 2024, alone, $1 trillion in additional wealth was generated for the 19 richest American households. This is 0.00001% of the population. 1 in 10 million accounts for almost 2% of total U.S. household wealth. The process of social polarization is growing like a malignant tumor. In 2021, there were 1,370 billionaires. By the end of 2024, the number had risen to 1,990, an increase of 45%. The richest 1% owns 31% of the wealth of the United States. Collectively, the wealthiest 10% owns 67% of the nation's wealth. By way of comparison, the bottom 50% own just 3%. So, it's ridiculous, right? Talks about how also, these many people who are unhoused. A lot of times people don't talk about the people who are living in their cars or who couch surf, right? People who live in, on people's couches, or people who live in the motels, right? You have people who live there. They're still considered homeless because they're living there out of duress, not because they can actually afford it. And then you got some of these people who they probably have to live in a motel, even though they probably could afford a rent, but they can't because, well, their credit isn't good enough. They can't pass a credit score. They can't pass a credit check. And so then they're forced to live in those type of conditions as well. And so, it's people like, Gavin Newsom that are also making it so that it's harder on these people. So it's just, it's also, wages don't keep up with the cost of inflation. And of course, California is literally the number one state that's the most expensive state to live in, according to the National Low Income Housing Coalition. You have to make about, well, I think somewhere north of $45 an hour to afford a two-bedroom apartment. And that's unconscionable. You can't, that's unsustainable. And people start talking about, oh, well, they make $15 an hour minimum wage. That ain't jack squat. That's nothing. When you need to make what, 3-4 times that amount in order to be able to afford a two-bedroom apartment, that's crazy. So when it comes to, what people like Gavin Newsom are doing, this is why I say what he's doing is very similar to what people like Ron DeSantis is doing. I see really no difference between them. Let's take a look at this. So this is out of Daytona Beach. It says, what's Florida's homeless law? How new rules will impact homeless population. This came out last year. It says Florida homeless are now banned from camping or sleeping on public property under a new law signed by Governor Ron DeSantis back in March. Who does this sound like? It sounds like Gavin Newsom. It says the new statute took effect on Tuesday, October 2nd, with the Associated Press sharing it as one of the strictest anti-homeless measures in the nation. Florida would not allow homeless encampments to intrude on its citizens or undermine their quality of life like we see in states like New York and California. Well, apparently, that's BS because California is doing the same thing. How is it any different? So here's Ron DeSantis playing partisan politics, when in reality, Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom are just as cruel as one or the other. They don't really give a damn about people who are unhoused. They don't give a damn about people having upward mobility in this state. They don't. So really, what's the difference between them? There's no difference. And I'm sick and tired of people thinking, oh, well, the Democrats are better than Republicans. No, they're not. You can see it right here. Supporters say it is compassionate conservatism and puts efforts where they're needed. Critics say it creates forced internment camps with the goal of getting unhoused people out of sight. Here's what to know. So, like, guess what? Just like in California, out of sight, out of mind, right? It says under HB 1365, it stated homeless individuals are prohibited from camping on city streets, sidewalks, and parks, and instead placed in temporary shelters monitored by law enforcement agencies. The state of Florida has the enforcement tools needed to ensure local governments comply. So the state of Florida has the enforcement tools needed to ensure that local governments comply. What do we see that Gavin Newsom is doing? He's withholding funds from local municipalities if they do not comply. It's the same thing that Ron DeSantis is doing. I want you guys to see how Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom are basically two sides of the same decrepit, disgusting, rusty coin. They are both exactly the same, right? No different. It says if a county designates public property to be used for public camping or sleeping, the county must establish and maintain minimum standards and procedures related to ensuring safety, security, sanitation, mental health, and substance abuse services coordination. Homeless shelters will require occupants to not use drugs. Does this include Tylenol, Advil? Does this include insulin? What does that include? What are you talking about? All right. So authorizes a resident of the county, owner of a business located in the county, or the attorney general to bring civil action to enjoin the county or municipality from authorizing public camping or sleeping without designating property for that use. It says the bill will also provide what is known as wraparound services, including mental health care for the state's homeless population, according to DeSantis. During the bill's signing, the governor said that the bill will help maintain and ensure Florida streets are clean and that Florida streets are safe for our residents. Hey, let me ask you this: why instead? Look, it's a very easy solution. If you want to get rid of homelessness, house the people. And don't have barriers to, well, you can't use these substances, because substance abuse really is just a health issue. It's a health issue. It's a mental and physical health issue. So therefore, you have to make sure that they're healthy physically and mentally, but that should not bar them from having housing, permanent housing. And then it's like, well, it's a mental health issue. This is how you help the mentally ill? By saying, oh, you better get well first before we give you housing? What? What if we did that for physical health? Well, you got to be healthy before you could actually live in this house. I'd be homeless then. I'd be homeless. Because, being somebody who's on kidney dialysis, I'm not at optimal health. It's crazy. So this is how similar Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis are. This is how similar they are. And yes, Florida has a homeless problem, right? It's the third most populous state for homelessness. After California, New York, Florida is the third most, right? It says, what are the leading causes of homelessness? It says housing. More than any other time, there's a lack of housing that low-income people can afford. Without housing options, people face eviction, instability, and homelessness. It says income. Low-income households often do not earn enough to pay for food, clothing, and transportation and a place they can call home. So we're talking about wages, living wages. Therefore, if you have a living wage, then it will make it easier for people to not be homeless. But yet, you guys don't want to raise the minimum wage. And the crazy part is, we passed a $15 an hour minimum wage here in Florida that takes full effect in September of 2026, next year. And so it'll finally reach $15 an hour by next September. By September of next year. But that's not enough, because we need to make it at least $35 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. So that's wholly inadequate. Right? Health and homelessness are inextricably linked. Health problems can cause a person's homelessness as well as be exacerbated by experience. Housing is key to addressing the health needs of people experiencing homelessness, including mental health, right? Domestic violence. Many survivors of domestic violence become homeless when leaving an abusive relationship. Do we care about victims of domestic violence or not? Racial inequality. Most minority groups in the United States experience homelessness at a higher rate than whites, and therefore make up a disproportionate share of the homeless population. Let me ask you this question. How many Black Americans are homeless right now where reparations for freedmen would actually end their homelessness? I'm sorry, but we got to call a thing a thing. Because how many Black Americans? Because I'm gonna tell you right now, doing mutual aid, when I get out there, who do I see mostly out in these streets? Black Americans, particularly a lot of Black American men that are out in these streets, subject to the elements, dealing with mental health issues. Some of them are veterans. And if they were to get reparations, then most likely, I would be willing to bet 99.95% would not be outside like that. Because we have what's called generational poverty. So that's the thing, man. So when people look at Gavin Newsom and think, oh, well, he's somewhat better than Ron DeSantis, no, that's complete and utter BS. BS. They are one and the same, cut from the same cloth. They just don't want you to know it. This is why we have to walk away from both parties. This is why we got to start focusing our energies mostly on mutual aid. Now, if you can do other things like focus on ballot initiatives, focus on local government, fine, by all means. But mutual aid and building dual power needs to be at the top of your list. Because these guys, they're only going to fight for the corporate dictators that run them. And remember what Butch Ware said, who funds you runs you. Well, guess what? They're being ran through by the billionaire class. So Gavin Newsom is a POS, just like Ron DeSantis. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.